I cannot believe how good this game looks. This is Mirror's Edge in 8K. This game came out in 2008. That was a long time ago. I thought it'd be fun to drop back in and play some today, talk about the game a bit, and explain why it still looks incredible. I think this could pass for a modern game still, right? Look how good this is. I'm not using any mods or anything either. This is just the basic version of the game that released in 2008 on PC, ultra graphics, 8K resolution. And I think it proves that if you use an art style that's interesting, unique, and well themed, all put together, you can make a game that's timeless and is always going to look good. Now, believe it or not, this is running on Unreal Engine 3 and not Frostbite like you might assume, because DICE are the developers of this game and they were working on the Frostbite engine at the time, but it was still being put together. So they prototyped this game originally on the Refractor Battlefield 2 engine, but ultimately they used Unreal Engine. But there was some trickery involved, and we're going to get into that now. So DICE partnered with another Swedish company called Illuminate Labs, who specialized in lighting for games. And they developed a lighting solution called Beast that integrated directly with Unreal Engine 3. And Beast was used to bake light maps in the game, shadow maps, clouds, all with global illumination. And this created natural looking shadows, soft shadows, and very realistic color bouncing. It was ahead of the game in terms of what could have been done in real time back then. You put this all together though, and ultimately it gave the game a unique art style, ensuring that 15-16 years later, where we are today, it still looks fantastic. Of course, it came with a cost though, because getting the lighting right for each level was a very difficult process apparently for the developers, and it required a lot of individual artistry, hand tweaking settings, and a considerable amount of time for rendering and building every single level in the game. Any tiny tweak or change to the geometry apparently meant rendering the whole thing again. And during development, DICE actually invested in CPUs and housed them separately in an air-conditioned room to speed up the rendering process. So it took a lot of time and effort, but as you can see, it was definitely worth it. Interestingly, to animate the shadows of the characters in the game that were moving, they had to use a different system that does run in real time simultaneously with the game. Going back a bit further in time, the game was said to be conceived in 2006, and the working title for it was Project Faith, Faith being the final protagonist in the game. The idea was an attempt to make a first-person game that was different from all of the other games out there at the time. DICE wanted to focus more on the character themselves and their physicality, rather than many other FPS games that just focused on gunplay and fighting. With this emphasis on movement, physicality, you really felt more connected to it. You could look down, you could see your arms, your legs, your torso, and that helps to ground you as a player in the world. There's often a huge playground in front of you, and as the player you're free to navigate that and get to your objective, whatever that may be. Interestingly, a producer called Tom Farah, who worked at EA and DICE, mentioned two games in particular that the developers took inspiration from. Prince of Persia from Ubisoft, kind of makes sense with all the running and jumping, right? And another game that I'd never heard of before, but I've since looked it up. It's a game called Breakdown by Namco, released on the Xbox in 2004. There's some gameplay footage of it up on YouTube, and you can definitely see the inspiration there. Now, if you didn't play Mirror's Edge or you haven't clocked onto it yet, the gameplay is heavily connected to the art style. As you're playing, you may notice that the movement is momentum based. Running fast and chaining moves together, keeping the flow going, feels more fun and satisfying. And the developers wanted to ensure that players could easily look around them and distinguish where the routes were and figure out where they wanted to go as quick as possible. The world is fairly white and sterile by design, but you've got these pops of color in there, and they indicate elements that you can use to traverse. These bright colors, like the reds that literally pop and stand out, gave the game a distinctive look, but also informed the player on how to navigate the environment. DICE called it runner vision. You can disable it in the settings if you want a hyper realistic look instead, but I kind of like it, and it gives it that unique visual punch. Just going back to inspiration too, whilst Assassin's Creed might have the claim of being the pioneer of major AAA parkour games, releasing a year before this in 2007, Mirror's Edge could have been the first to do it in first person, and no doubt inspired many games after it released, arguably paving the way for a more connected and dynamic movement system in first person games forevermore. Look at Dying Light, Dishonored, Ghost Runner, Titanfall, even Apex Legends. They all use very similar movement mechanics to what was on offer in Mirror's Edge. The music and the soundscape of the game is very iconic too, and over 2.5 hours of in-game music were composed by electronic music artist Solar Fields, who's still making music today. And the main theme song, perhaps the most recognizable, titled Still Alive, was put together by Swedish producers Rami Jakub and Arnthor Björgensson. Many of the cinematic moments in the game synchronize perfectly with the music. The beauty of the movement in Mirror's Edge though is that there's a ton of depth in it, and you really are in control of many of the actions that Faith has. If you want to be fast, keep things flowing, you've got to think about the routes that you're taking and also the button presses that's going into this. It might seem simple on the surface, but timing, for example, is a critical component here too. Like in this sequence I recorded earlier, we're being chased out of an office building where we've stumbled across a murder, and all of a sudden a SWAT team show up and start hunting us down. They can easily kill you if they catch up to you, so speed is key. Here we're going to see a wall turn, run up the wall, turn, jump. 3 key presses that have to be timed correctly, into a wall run, jump over. As we land here, you have to press shift and do a roll. If you don't, the timing of it is wrong, you take damage and you stop in your tracks, the flow is broken. And the red highlight here on the vent indicates the way forward. And as we leave the vent being shot to pieces, we have to press shift the moment before we land. And something simple as opening a door in this game is also a button press. Mouse 1 just before you get to it, otherwise you will run into it and nothing will happen. It's embarrassing really. And now we're literally sliding down the side of a building. In 2008, this was cool as hell. Still pretty cool nowadays. Avoiding bullets as a Black Hawk helicopter with a machine gun on the side hunts us down and attempts to kill us. And you may notice the speed lines or the wisps on the corners of the screen here. It makes you feel like you're running faster, but it also indicates when you're at the maximum speed possible in a flow state. And if you want to keep running at that speed, again, you have to make sure that you're chaining together your combos, timing moves correctly, and generally going as fast as you can as you navigate the environment. When you land on a big red pad like that, you don't take any fall damage, so you can see that as a bit of a safe place to drop down, regardless of how high you were when you fell. As we round the corner here, pay attention to the red mark on the back wall there. That's the mark of a runner, and if you spot that, nearby there will be a yellow collectible bag, and this is a runner drop or a runner bag that's been left, and there are 30 of them in total hidden throughout the game, and of course there's an achievement if you manage to collect them all. Little wall jump there, into a wall run, and then we're going to wall run, turn and jump, hop over, and then over the fence. Some of the fences in the game are electrified, and if they are, you'll see a notice on them, or you might see a rat run into them and suffer an unfortunate fate. Some of that beautiful pre-baked lighting here in full effect. SWAT team on the opposite side of the corridor. Bit of a stealthier section. They've got no idea. And we're into the elevator and down. The doors close as they light it up with bullets. Fortunately, we're in one of those famously bulletproof elevators. Lucky for us. As we exit the elevator, the color scheme changes a little bit. Nice yellow. Many of the levels have distinct vibes and feels to them, just as a way of differentiating them, I suppose, and giving you different vibes for each location. Time of day also changes. There are many puzzles in the game too. It isn't always as simple as just run forward, and the routes aren't predefined and obvious. There's many different ways to solve a puzzle. It could be a puzzle about jumping to get to a specific location, or it could be as simple as getting from A to B without being killed as quick as possible. And you'll notice now that we've made it to the street level. Super cool. We started up at the top of a skyscraper, made our way down outside it, inside it, down an elevator, onto the street level, and we're going to have to escape via the subway system. There are several subways in the game, and many of them take reference and inspiration from the real metro stations that are in Stockholm. A lot of them have this artistic, colourful vibe to them. The campaign itself can be completed in around 2 to 3 hours for most people. If you know what you're doing, you can complete it quicker, of course, and I've seen world records on YouTube around 25 minutes in total, where they use crazy movement techniques to jump between buildings and get to normally inaccessible areas. Melee combat's in the game too. You can do jump kicks, you can do slide kicks, you can punch, you can even disarm the bad guys as well if you get the timing right. There is a slow motion mechanic too if you'd like to use that when you've built up enough momentum, designed to make the disarming procedure a bit easier. Once you've disarmed an opponent, you can use the gun for a few shots, as we saw at the start with the shotgun. Another movement technique that we haven't talked about yet is the curl. And we saw that at the start as I jumped over a fence. You can use that to curl up into a ball, and that will typically give you higher and quicker clearance over tight obstacles. Almost at the end now. What we've got to do, avoid that helicopter one last time. Zip line down. Slide through the glass, and we meet with a friend who can help us on our escape. Epic slow motion moment at the end there. And here we're going to leave it. That was Mirror's Edge in 8K. Still a fantastic game, looks gorgeous and fun to play even in 2024. Drop me a like if you enjoyed the video, thank you. Let me know your thoughts below and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.